There is a question that surfaces every time a dominant team in any sport reaches a certain altitude, and it is not the question most people think it is. The question is not who can beat them. The question is how they avoid beating themselves. The Springboks are at that altitude. They have been there for the better part of 3 years, and the view from the summit, as far as Rassie Erasmus is concerned, shows nothing on the horizon that frightens him. Some might say that's arrogance, but the truth is this is an honest assessment of where South African rugby sits in March 2026, and, if you have watched what Erasmus has quietly been building while the rest of the rugby world has been arguing about France's back three and England's coaching future, the honest assessment is the only one available. To understand what Erasmus is doing, you need to go back to Australia in the year 2000. Steve Waugh's cricket side had reached a point of dominance that left them with a problem no coaching manual had ever properly addressed. The opposition could no longer give them the challenge that they needed. No team in world cricket was capable of stretching them sufficiently to force improvement. And sides that stop improving, however dominant, eventually stop winning. Waugh's solution was to turn inward. He created a set of internal stretch targets so demanding that the Australians were effectively competing against themselves. The opposition became largely irrelevant. The real contest was whether Australia could meet the standards Waugh had set for his own players. Those targets were specific, measurable, and non-negotiable. Any batsman who did not score at 4 runs per over or above would not be considered for test selection. Reputation, experience, seniority, none of it counted. The number was the number. If Australia won the toss, they would bat first, in any conditions, on any pitch, in any country. No safety-first decisions. No reading the conditions and opting for the easier path. First. Always. Any bowler with a strike rate above 54, meaning a wicket every 54 balls or fewer was the requirement, was not in the team. Not a preference, an absolute condition of selection. Any bowler going at more than 3 runs per over was not in the team. Economy was not a bonus, it was a baseline. These were not aspirational targets. These were hard floors, and established players fell by the wayside as a result. The effect was to create a team that was permanently competing at a level the opposition simply could not reach. By the time they got to a test match, Waugh's Australians had already played a harder game than the one in front of them. That is what sustained dominance looks like when it is engineered rather than inherited. There is no shortcut around talent. Waugh knew that. The stretch targets only worked because Australia had the players to meet them. The targets gave the talent a ceiling to push against. Without that ceiling, the talent would have coasted. The Springbok front row is, at this moment, deeper than any front row in world rugby history. Oxenk, Frans Malherbe, Vincent Koch, Wilco Louw, Gerard Steenekamp, Thomas du Toit, Malcolm Marx, Bongin Bonambi, Johan Grobler, Jan Hendrik Wessels, and behind them, a pipeline of uncapped props and hookers of genuine test quality already moving through the alignment camp system. Saifazethu Nibelel has not yet played professional club rugby. He was on the Boks watch list the year before last. Others include Kai Pratt and Asinathin Lebakan. The production line is not slowing. It is accelerating. When your third choice loose head can trouble any tight head in the Northern Hemisphere, you are not operating in the same conversation as the nations scrambling to find one reliable starting prop. You are operating in a different sport. The scrum is the architectural foundation on which everything else in Springbok rugby is constructed, and that foundation is currently so deep that Erasmus ran an alignment camp in early March that included multiple players yet to make their URC debuts and still had the depth to run it as a serious, competitive selection exercise rather than a scouting trip. The alignment camp squad alone tells the story of where this program is. Multiple Rugby World Cup winners in attendance, including Frans Malherbe returning from the back and neck injuries that kept him out since the 2023 World Cup final. 5 junior Springboks in the group, not as observers, but as genuine selection candidates. Multiple players yet to make senior professional debuts for their URC franchises included on merit. Cameron Hancom now treated as a senior regular. Sacha Feinberg Ngomazio into the leadership cohort, Evan Roos approaching his peak after 3 seasons in the system without the opportunities his talent demands. Erasmus has confirmed that he intends to operate a split squad through the inaugural Nations Championship. South Africa face England at Ellis Park in July, then Scotland and Wales, before travelling north in November to face Italy, France, and Ireland across 3 consecutive weekends. 6 tests. 2 windows. The full competitive weight of the world's most ambitious new international tournament. And Erasmus intends to use it as a development program. He will rotate and he will blood. He will send players onto the Ellis Park pitch against England in July who would, in any previous Springbok program, be waiting 18 months for a first cap. The Northern Hemisphere nations traveling to South Africa this summer will arrive expecting to face a side reduced by rotation. What they will actually face is a side built to Erasmus's internal stretch standards, with players who have been prepared specifically to meet them. The distinction matters enormously. This is the wall principle in a rugby jersey. Erasmus does not need England or Scotland or France to push his best players. He needs a competitive structure within which his developing players can prove they meet the standards the program demands. The Nations Championship gives him that structure. Whether the opposition is full strength or not is, from his perspective, beside the point. The wall parallel invites a question: what are Erasmus's internal stretch targets? They have not been published in the way walls were, but the shape of the program makes them visible. A scrum that does not simply compete but dominates. A lineout that functions at 97% or above regardless of who is throwing. Replacements who do not maintain a game state but change it. A defensive system that functions identically with the second choice back row as with the first. Kicking accuracy under pressure that does not deteriorate in the final quarter. These are not aspirations. They are the Springbok floor, and any player who cannot meet them does not play, as Mbonimbi, Trevor Nyakane, and Willie Leroux have recently discovered, regardless of their records and their standing in the game. That last point is worth sitting with. Mbonimbi is one of the most experienced and decorated hookers in world rugby. He is not in the current alignment camp picture. That is not a decision made on age or form in any conventional sense. It is a decision made on the basis that the program has moved to a point where the next generation meets the standard and the standard is the only thing that matters. There is no sentiment in Wall's targeting system. There is none in Erasmus's either. France's attacking brilliance is the most aesthetically compelling rugby being played anywhere in the world right now. And the Nations Championship will produce a November fixture at the Stade de France between the Springboks and Les Bleus that will be one of the genuine events of the rugby year. Ireland's defensive system and breakdown work rate give them the structural tools to compete with anyone on the right day. New Zealand, perpetually reconstructing and perpetually relevant, will produce the Rugby Championship contest that always generates its own drama. But none of these nations walks into a fixture against South Africa in 2026 as anything other than the underdog, and the margin between them and the Springboks is not closing at a pace that suggests a competitive shift is imminent. The only team that can beat the Springboks are the Springboks, and Rassie knows this, and has built a program specifically designed to stop it happening. The Split Squad Nations Championship is not a risk. It is the next stage of the most meticulously engineered international rugby program the game has seen, the direct descendant of what Wall built in that Australian dressing room a quarter of a century ago. Translated into the language of scrums and lineouts and the 70-meter alignment sessions that are now a permanent feature of the Springbok calendar, you can argue about whether it is good for spectacle, whether the Nations Championship deserves a full-strength Springbok 15 in every fixture. Whether the sides traveling to Johannesburg in July will feel the exercise is worth the air miles if Erasmus sends out a developmental 15, all of that is legitimate. None of it changes the central fact: South Africa are the world champions. Their front row is deeper than the Mariana Trench. Their alignment camp now includes players who have not kicked a ball in professional rugby, and Rassie Erasmus looks at all of it and concludes he needs to go deeper still. Steve Wall would have understood that thought completely. The rest of the world should be very worried about it.